Section 23 of the Public Orations of Demosthenes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Roger Serling. The Public Orations of Demosthenes. Translated by Arthur Wallace Picard. The Third Phillipic. Part 2. What, then, is the cause of these things? For as it was not without reason and just cause that the Hellenes in old days were so prompt for freedom, so it is not without reason or cause that they are now so prompt to be slaves. There was a spirit, men of Athens, a spirit in the minds of the people in those days, which is absent today. The spirit which vanquished the wealth of Persia, which led Hellas in the path of freedom, and never gave way in the face of battle by sea or by land. A spirit whose extinction today has brought universal ruin and turned Hellas upside down. What was this spirit? It was nothing subtle nor clever. It meant that men who took money from those who aimed at dominion or at the ruin of Hellas were execrated by all. That it was then a very grave thing to be convicted of bribery. That the punishment for the guilty man was the heaviest that could be inflicted. That for him there could be no plea for mercy, nor hope of pardon. No orator nor general would then sell the critical opportunity whenever it arose, the opportunity so often offered to men by fortune, even when they are careless and their foes are on their guard. They did not barter away the harmony between people and people, nor their own mistrust of the tyrant and the foreigner, nor any of these high sentiments. Where are such sentiments now? They have been sold in the market and are gone, and those have been imported in their stead, through which the nation lies ruined and plague-stricken. The envy of the man who has received his hire, the amusement which accompanies his avowal, the pardon granted those whose guilt is proved, the hatred of one who censures the crime, and all the appurtenances of corruption. For as to ships, numerical strength, unstinting abundance of funds, and all other material of war, and all the things by which the strength of cities is estimated, every people can command these in greater plenty and on a larger scale by far than in old days. But all resources are rendered unserviceable, ineffectual, unprofitable, by those who traffic in them. That these things are so today, you doubtless see and need no testimony of mine, and that in times gone by the opposite was true, I will prove to you not by any words of my own, but by a record inscribed by your ancestors on a pillar of bronze, and placed on the Acropolis, not to be a lesson to themselves. They needed no such record to put them in a right mind, but to be a reminder and an example to you of the zeal that you ought to display in such a cause. What, then, is the record? Arthmius, son of Pythonox, of Zelea, is an outlaw, and is the enemy of the Athenian people and their allies, he and his house. Then follows the reason for which the step was taken. Because he brought the gold from the Medes and the Peloponnese. Such is the record. Consider, in heaven's name, what must have been in the mind of the Athenians of that day, when they did this, and their conception of their position. They set up a record that because a man of Zelea, Arthmius by name, a slave of the king of Persia, for Zelea is in Asia, as part of his service to the king had brought gold not to Athens, but to the Peloponnese, he should be an enemy of Athens and her allies, he and his house, and that they should be outlaws. And this outlawry is no such disfranchisement as we ordinarily mean the word, for what would it matter to a man of Zelea that he might have no share in the public life of Athens? But there was a clause in the law of murder, dealing with those in connection with whose death the law does not allow a prosecution for murder, but the slaying of them is to be a holy act. Quote, "And let him die an outlaw," end quote, it runs. The meaning, accordingly, is this, that the slayer of such a man is to be pure from all guilt. They thought, therefore, that the safety of all the Hellenes was a matter which concerned themselves. Apart from this belief, it could not have mattered to them whether any one bought or corrupted men in the Peloponnese, and whenever they detected such offenders, they carried their punishment and their vengeance so far as to pillory their names forever. As the natural consequence, the Hellenes were a terror to their foreigner, not the foreigner to the Hellenes. It is not so now. Such is not your attitude in these or other matters. But what is it? You know it yourselves, for why should I accuse you explicitly on every point? And that of the rest of the Hellenes is like your own, and no better. And so I say that the present situation demands your utmost earnestness and good counsel. And what counsel? Do you bid me tell you, and will you not be angry if I do so? He reads from the document. Now there is an ingenious argument, which is used by those who would reassure the city to the effect that, after all, Philip is not yet in the position once held by the Spartans, who ruled everywhere over sea and land, with the king for their ally, and nothing to withstand them, and that, none the less, Athens defended herself even against them, and was not swept away. Since that time, the progress in every direction, one may say, has been great, and has made the world today very different from what it was then. But I believe that in no respect has there been greater progress or development than in the art of war. In the first place, I am told that in those days the Spartans and all our other enemies would invade us for 4 or 5 months, during, that is, the actual summer, and would damage Attica with infantry and citizen troops, and then return home again. And so old-fashioned were the men of that day, nay rather, such true citizens, that no one ever purchased any object from another for money, but their warfare was of a legitimate and open kind. But now, as I'm sure you see, most of our losses are the result of treachery, and no issue is decided by open conflict or battle. While you are told that it is not because he leads a column of heavy infantry that Philip can march wherever he chooses, because he has attached to himself to a force of light infantry, cavalry, archers, mercenaries, and similar troops. And whenever with such advantages he falls upon a state which is disordered within, and in their distrust of one another no one goes out in defense of its territory, he brings up his engines and besieges them. I pass over the fact that summer and winter are alike to him, that there is no close season during which he suspends operations. But if you all know these things, and take due account of them, you surely must not let the war pass into Attica, nor be dashed from your seat through looking back to the simplicity of those old hostilities with Sparta. You must guard against him, at the greatest possible distance, both by political measures and by preparations. You must prevent his stirring from home, instead of grappling with him at close quarters in a struggle to the death. For men of Athens, we have many natural advantages for a war, if we are willing to do our duty. There is the character of his country, much of which we can harry and damage, and 1,000 other things. But for a pitched battle he is in better training than we. Nor have you only to recognize these facts, and to resist him by actual operations of war. You must also by reasoned judgment and of set purpose come to execrate those who address you in his interest, remembering that it is impossible to master the enemies of the city until you punish those who are serving them in the city itself. And this, before God and every heavenly power, you will not be able to do, for you have reached such a pitch of folly or distraction or, I know not what to call it, for often has the fear actually entered my mind that some more than mortal power may be driving our fortunes to ruin, that to enjoy their abuse, or their malice, or their jests, or whatever your motive may chance to be, you call upon men to speak who are hirelings, and some of whom would not even deny it, and you laugh to hear the abuse of others. And terrible as this is, there is yet worse to be told. For you have actually made political life safer for these men than for those who uphold your own cause. And yet I observe what calamities the willingness to listen to such men lays up in store. I will mention the facts known to you all. In Olympus, among those who were engaged in public affairs, there was one party who were on the side of Philip and served his interests in everything, and another whose aim was their city's real good, and the preservation of their fellow citizens from bondage, which were the destroyers of their country, which betrayed the cavalry, through whose betrayal Olympus perished, those whose sympathies were with Philip's cause, those who, while the city still existed, brought such dishonest and slanderous charges against the speakers whose advice was for the best, that, in the case of Apollonides at least, the people of Olympus was even induced to banish the accused. Nor is this instance of the unmixed evil wrought by these practices in the case of the Olynthians an exceptional one, or without parallel elsewhere. For in Eretria, when Plutarchus and the mercenaries had been got rid of, and the people had control of the city and of Porthmus, one party wished to entrust the state to you, the other to entrust it to Philip. And through listening mainly, or rather entirely, to the latter, these poor luckless Eretrians were at last persuaded to banish the advocates of their own interests. For, as you know, Philip their ally sent Hipponicus with 1,000 mercenaries, stripped Porthmus of its walls, and set up 3 tyrants, Hipparchus, Automedon, and Cleitarchus. And since then he has already twice expelled them from the country when they wished to recover their position, sending on the first occasion the mercenaries commanded by Eurylochus, on the second those under Parmenio. And why go through the mass of the instances? Enough to mention how in Arrhaeus Philip had as his agents Philistides, Menippus, Socrates, Thoas, and Agapeus, the very men who are now in possession of the city, and everyone knew the fact, while a certain Euphraeus, who once lived here in Athens, acted in the interest of freedom to save his country from bondage. To describe the insults and the contumely with which he met would require a long story, but a year before the capture of the town he laid an information of treason against Philistides and his party, having perceived the nature of their plans. A number of men joined forces with Philip for their paymaster and director, and haled Euphraeus off to prison as a disturber of the peace. Seeing this, the democratic party in Arrhaeus, instead of coming to the rescue of Euphraeus, and beating the other party to death, displayed no anger at all against them, agreed with a malicious pleasure that Euphraeus deserved his fate. After this, the conspirators worked with all the freedom they desired for the capture of the city, and made arrangements for the execution of the scheme, while any of the democratic party, who perceived what was going on, maintained a panic-stricken silence, remembering the fate of Euphraeus. So wretched was their condition that though this dreadful calamity was confronting them, no one dared open his lips, until all was ready and the enemy was advancing up to the walls. Then the one party set about the defense, and the other about the betrayal of the city. And when the city had been captured in this base and shameful manner, the successful party governed despotically, and of those who had been their own protectors, and had been ready to treat Euphraeus with all possible harshness, they expelled some and murdered others, while the good Euphraeus killed himself, thus testifying to the righteousness and purity of his motives in opposing Philip on behalf of his countrymen. Now for what reason, you may be wondering, were the peoples of Olynthus and Eretria and Araeus more agreeably disposed towards Philip's advocates than towards their own? The reason was the same as it is to you, that those who speak for your true good can never, even if they would, speak to win popularity with you. They are constrained to inquire how the state may be saved, while their opponents in the very act of seeking popularity are cooperating with Philip. The one party said, "You must pay taxes." The other, "There is no need to do so." The one said, "Go to war and do not trust him." The other said, "Remain at peace," until they were in toils. And, not to mention each separately, I believe that the same thing was true of all. The one side said what would enable them to win favor, the other what would secure the safety of their state. And at last the main body of the people accepted much that they proposed, not from any such desire for gratification, nor from ignorance, but as a concession to circumstances, thinking that their cause was now wholly lost. It is this fate, I solemnly assure you, that I dread for you, when the time comes that you make your reckoning, and realize that there is no longer anything that can be done. May you never find yourselves, men of Athens, in such a position. Yet, in any case, it were better to die 10,000 deaths than to do anything out of servility towards Philip, or to sacrifice any of those who speak for your good. A noble recompense did the people in Araeus receive for entrusting themselves to Philip's friends and thrusting Euphraeus aside, and a noble recompense the democracy of Eretria for driving away your envoys and surrendering to Cleitarchus. They are slaves, scourged and butchered. A noble clemency did he show to the Olynthians, who elected Lasthenes to command the cavalry and banished Apollonides. It is folly and it is cowardice to cherish hopes like these, to give way to evil counsels, to refuse to do anything that you should do, to listen to the advocates of the enemy's cause, and to fancy that you dwell in so great a city that, whatever happens, you will not suffer any harm. Aye, and it is shameful to exclaim after the event, "Why, who would have expected this? Of course, we ought to have done, or not to have done, such and such things." The Olynthians could tell you of many things, to have foreseen which in time would have saved them from destruction. So too could the people of Araeus, and the Phocians, and every other people that has been destroyed. But how does that help them now? So long as the vessel is safe, be it great or small, so long must the sailor and the pilot and every man in his place exert himself and take care that no one may capsize it by design or by accident. But when the seas have overwhelmed it, all their efforts are in vain. So it is, men of Athens, with us. While we are still safe, with our great city, our vast resources, our noble name, what are we to do? Perhaps someone sitting here has long been wishing to ask you this question. Aye, and I will answer it, and will move my motion, and you shall carry it, if you wish. We ourselves, in the first place, must conduct the resistance and make preparation for it, with ships that is, and money, and soldiers. For though all but ourselves give way and become slaves, we at least must contend for freedom. And when we have made all these preparations ourselves and let them be seen, then let us call upon the other states for aid, and send envoys to carry our message, in all directions, to the Peloponnese, to Rhodes, to Chios, to the king. For it is not unimportant for his interest either that Philip should be prevented from subjugating the world, that so, if you persuade them, you may have partners to share the danger and the expense in case of need, and if you do not, you may at least delay the march of events. For since the war is with a single man, and not against the strength of the United States, even delay is not without its value, any more than were those embassies of protest which last year went round the Peloponnese, when I and Polyeuctus, that best of men, and Hegesippus and the other envoys went on our tour and forced him to halt, so that he neither went to attack Acarnania, nor set out for the Peloponnese. But I do not mean that we should call upon the other states, if we are not willing to take any of the necessary steps ourselves. It is folly to sacrifice what is our own, and then pretend to be anxious for the interests of others, to neglect the present, and alarm others in regard to the future. I do not propose this. I say that we must send money to the forces in the Chersonese, and do all that they ask of us, that we must make preparations ourselves, while we summon, convene, instruct, and warn the rest of the Hellenes. That is the policy for a city with a reputation such as yours. But if you fancy that the people of Chalcis or of Megara will save Hellas while you run away from the task, you are mistaken. They may well be content if they can each save themselves. The task is yours. It is the prerogative that your forefathers won and through many a great peril bequeathed to you. But if each of you is to sit and consult his inclinations, looking for some way by which he may escape any personal action, the first consequence will be that you will never find anyone who will act, and the second, I fear, that the day will come when we shall be forced to do, at one and the same time, all the things we wish to avoid. This, then, is my proposal, and this I move. If the proposal is carried out, I think that even now the state of our affairs may be remedied. But if any one has a better proposal to make, let him make it, and give us his advice. And I pray to all the gods that whatever be the decision that you are about to make, it may be for your own good. End of the Third Phillipic. End of section 23. Recording by Roger Serling.